Okay, let's wait for a moment. Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to More Than Just Money series, where all your curiosity will be answered, inshallah. Okay, while waiting.
Even can you still hear us, right? I think you can off the video of your.
Okay. All right, Mr.
Hello.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
All right. Is everything okay?
Testing the mic. Am I loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And good evening. Thank you for being here. And welcome to our of More Money series for anything that Islamic finance related. Right, Mr. Raj, I guess a problem hearing a duo. It's an echoing voice.
Oh, okay, maybe. Hold on a second.
All right.
Hold on a second. Just bear with me.
All right. We will pause live and so.
Is this better? Hello, testing.
Okay.
Better?
All right. Better.
Okay, go.
Okay. So, let me firstly introduce. Wait, Mr. Raj, there is a echoing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put an earphone. Yeah, just bear with me a second. Sorry.
And I'm also currently an investor relations and data analyst in Capital Boost, and I'm also in research department of IFLSG covering Sharia and finance. For IFSG is a community of scholars, finance professionals, and students in Islamic finance. What started as a WhatsApp group has now become a society making with a long-term goal to serve the Singaporean community through. Okay, Mr. Raj, is everything all right?
Yep.
Okay, this ends my introduction. Okay, so tonight I'm really honored to share this platform with Mr. Raj Mohamad, who was the first teachers to teach me Islamic finance back when I was in Madrasah Al-Junid Islamiyah. And Mr. Raj Mohamad is currently the founder and managing director of 5 Pillars, a firm specializing in Islamic banking and finance. He has over 2 decades of experience in the conventional finance space, and his team in the financial institutions has given him better understanding on the pros and cons of the Islamic finance as it's practiced today. He's also a frequent commentator and speaker in the Islamic finance circuits. He gives back to the community through various social service agencies and has keen interest on the social and cultural studies of the Indian Muslim community. Recently, his firm has also participated in the cryptocurrency industry in various capacities. So once again, we welcome Mr. Raj and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone that is live with us tonight. All right?
Alaikum salam, and I'm looking forward to very good questions and discussion, inshallah. Right?
All right. All right, let's start off, Mr. Raj. With the global point view of Islamic finance, Mr. Raj, do you think Islamic finance has gotten its due ranking or space in the global financial industry? If yes, please share, and if it's a no, why not?
Yes, the short answer is yes, but is there room for more progress and recognition and application? The answer is absolutely yes again. We have to first understand, although Islamic finance draws its principle and methodology and systems from the Holy Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and conventional, which is obviously some 1400 years ago, and then conventional finance is only like 400 to 450 years old. Somehow it has taken a lot more, I would say it has progressed a lot more and it's been applied and used well over, as not as much as Islamic finance should. We have to pause and understand when and how did Islamic finance get into the fore recently. And I think although, first Islamic finance was started in Egypt, and then subsequently Malaysia played a very active role by virtue of Tabung Haji and Bank Islam and etc. The recent rise in oil price, and I think sometime in 2008, is when Islamic finance got a lot more serious. And it happened only because liquidity, which is basically financing, dried up in the conventional finance space, and the Middle East, which is oil rich, found themselves 4 times richer or 4 times wealthier. So they found that liquidity was available in the Middle East or oil-rich countries, which happened to be primarily Islamic. And then when conventional finance went to them for financing, one of the things that these investors asked is, are you Sharia compliant? So if you look back at the dates and find out when the Citibank and Standard Chartered and HSBC came up with their Islamic subsidiaries, you'll find the dates about the same time. Mm-hmm. So that is when Islamic finance got a serious look. And then you would look at various other developments that happened. So Malaysia went on to create a whole series of institutions and infrastructure, and so did other countries that started introducing Islamic finance jurisdictions within their regulation and financial framework. Right? So we believe, but we are very lucky that we've got the attention. Now it's the responsibility of us Muslims. How do we take advantage of this window of opportunity and then further develop it and leverage from this attention, and then work with the conventional financial institutions where most of the talent pool is, and then to try and make better use of this opportunity and come up with more products. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Raj. So after looking at a global point of view, let's now narrow down to specifically Singapore. All right. With Singapore coming in the top 10 spots for 4 out of 6 sectors in the Global Islamic Economy Indicator Index, but falling very low in the Islamic finance ranking. What would be a strong value proposition for Singapore to push for higher rankings in the Islamic finance, Mr. Raj?
Okay, so there were 3, 4 indicators that you have indicated there. First of all, you look them at uh, Islamic Finance Services indicators. Am I correct? The top 10, and
Yeah.
Singapore is one of them, number one. And then number two, you the question is whether Singapore, what else it should do to improve the ranking. Now we have to look at it from a different point of view. Singapore, as it is one of the financial giants in Asia, if
Mhm.
not Southeast Asia. So it has got exemplary central bank regulations. It has got par excellent regulatory frameworks, and it has got various other infrastructures that are very important for a commercial center, right? Be it transport, be it communication, talent pool, and etc. By virtue of that, it's very easy for Singapore to, for example, come up with, say, introduce a sukuk in Singapore. It is very easy for you to come up with investment products because the framework for these industries is very strong, clear, right? So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And Singapore has not and would not um, spend unnecessary resources in developing the Islamic finance framework by virtue of the fact that we have a very, very small market, that the domestic market alone is not sufficient to sustain uh, for anyone to dwell on Islamic products just relying on Singapore market. It has to be regional, right? So Singapore, by virtue of its, the whole system and infrastructure, will rank well for almost any financial industry. So if you look at private equity, it will do very well. If you look at hedge fund, it will do very well. If you look at, like for example, currently the cryptocurrency, it is also be doing very well. So you look at it, it's a system that's very good for easy. It's very easy for Islamic finance to plug into the system and become one of it. So because of that, you realize that it has got a very credible ranking, but if you look at Islamic finance Singapore per se, it may not correlate with the ranking.
Hence, Mr. Raj, follow up to the question above. Can Singapore become an Islamic finance hub? And if yes, or if so, how can it be?
Okay, you see this vocabulary of wanting to be a hub, wanting to be a center. You realize that there isn't. It's not a. It's not something that any country can claim to be. It had through organic growth, then a particular center would over a period of time become a hub, right? So it's not like tomorrow Singapore say we are a Islamic hub, or we are a transportation hub, or a communication hub, etc. It doesn't happen that way. There has to be a series of what would I say, infrastructure and other elements must be present for one to become a hub, right? So that's point number one. And number two, one cannot just one need not become a hub just by themselves. A region can become a hub, right? So what can happen here is that Singapore can brag about its central bank or financial framework, a regulatory framework, and can play that role. In other words, it can play the kitchen for everyone else to do their product out of Singapore for distribution to the rest of Asia. So if somebody says that, hey, let's try and have a sukuk to participate in the growth of Indo-China region, right? So they want to go and create a sukuk where the funds will be used to develop infrastructure in Bangladesh or Myanmar or Cambodia, whatsoever. So what can happen there, contract can be developed and structured out of Singapore. Why? Because people trust the Singapore regulatory framework. They will know that any disputes can be arbitrated well in the Singapore courts, and they will know that the Singapore financial system is strong enough that doesn't allow, or very, very, less cases of fraud or money laundering and those kind of things. So Singapore can play that role together with other leaders in the region who has got other resources. So Malaysia can bring in their scholastic input. So Singapore can come to their contractual input.
It's a collective.
So I guess that could be it. It's a collective effort, and that's what we should do. Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
Okay.
Like how we always hear hub for a country, financial hub, Islamic financial hub. So when you explain that it is actually a progression, it's actually a progress, and also a regional, a collective work that can make a region itself as a hub and not just one specific country, because we need a lot of scholars, and that's the most important.
Exactly.
We need to pull together to make it strong, right?
Yeah. That coupled with, if you have all the necessary ingredients, so call it financial, then if you don't have the product, then how do you become a hub? You can't. Now, even if you have a product, you must have a successful subscription rate. So if people are not subscribing to your product, again, it may fail. So it's not a single entity that can make any destination a hub. It has a collective, number one, and secondly, a series of incidents has to happen for it to be eventually be labeled as a hub.
So the supply and demand is also important. The demand should be...
As always. Yes, yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Raj. Now, let's go back to let's focus on the Singapore concept here. With a huge chunk of Muslim community in Singapore, being young adults and teenagers who are sophisticated and are looking for solution to their finances, do you think there are more rooms for growth locally when it comes to Islamic finance solutions? What are the steps you think we could achieve this?
Okay, so your question said that there is a, if I may quote, huge chunk. Now, that's very important. We underscore what do we mean by huge chunk. So the perspective is important and the contextualize is important. So I took a quick look at the numbers. Now, Singapore has, at the moment, 16% Muslim population, adding to 459,000. That's number one. And then number two, how many of this Muslim population have earning capacity, right? So how many of them are, let's say, able to work and able to have some income? Because without them able to spend on Islamic products, it doesn't work, right? So there's no point if there's good products, but the community doesn't have disposable income to invest in them, right? So you got to look at that. So the question here is, do we really have a huge chunk? And I doubt so, because 500,000 is not really a sufficient market for anyone to do it. But secondly, out of the 500,000, only 80% have got income capacity. And if you say it's young, and I think the young may have disposable income or investable income, right, at least in their early years, until they have responsibilities, and then that would diminish, right? Because when they are single, they will be able to have slightly more money that they can invest in. But you got to also understand, when they are young, when they're starting their career, their salary may not start at the high 5-figure or so they start in, say, maybe $3,000 or $4,000. Then 80% of that, or 50% of that is still insufficient to demand a market enough to sustain. So the question here is, I don't think Singapore per se has enough domestic products for the young yuppie group for them to invest. But we are so lucky now, right? I mean, we all have a technology savvy. You and I right now can go and buy a product of our smart gadget in our hand. So the world has opened up. You and I can invest in any product that allows us to do this. So Singapore, so I think the young people should first and foremost forget about Islamic finance first, right? First must understand the concept of investing and the risk that comes with it. Number one, right? So you must understand what is investing, and then someone came and asked me this question, dear Mr. Five Pillars, can I play in the stock market?
Mm-hmm.
They actually asked me that, and then I said no. No, is it halal or
Yeah.
haram to play in the stock market? Then I told them it's absolutely haram to play in the stock market, but you can invest in the stock market, right? So the concept is, if somebody wants to go in and make quick buck and then look for halal way to do it, the starting point is wrong, because if you want to make quick buck, which demonstrates that you've not done enough homework into where you want to invest in. You just want to go. You do such quick things in casinos, right? So investing is different. Investing is you understand where you are putting your money into, and secondly, you understand the risk that comes with it, right? So that's what one is. So first, one is to understand investing,
Mm-hmm.
and then secondly, you got to start looking for the Sharia products, right? Now, today, I think we are blessed with open technology that allows us to go and find if there are enough Sharia products. Now, I must say, we do not have enough, right? But we have to look at why there aren't, because like I said earlier, 500,000 is really not a market, because 500,000, you must acknowledge the 500,000 population does not necessarily fall in the high income bracket,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if this 500,000 fall into high net worth individuals, that's a different story, because banks will be knocking on your door, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're ultra high net worth individual, that's even more story, because the banks will now structure a product just for you. You say Sharia, they will do it for you.
Yeah.
Right? So there are, if you look enough, if you spend some time in research, there are opportunities. Is it enough? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So, Mr. Raj, as you mentioned just now, right, the population, when we especially talk about the Singaporean Muslim, we are actually make up of 15% of the population, right? So why again would fund managers, bank want to offer Islamic finance or bank services? Why is still there these services?
There are 2 or 3 reasons for this to happen. Right? Now, number one is these funds are large and big enough to spend money to them that does not dent their expenses. So if you look at it, who are they? I think you could potentially find something in the Schroders and the Templetons, and etc. So these are funds that run to hundreds of billions of dollars. And when they structure a product, they will structure for regional investors and not Singapore investors. Right? So they could find good domestic opportunity. So it could be a Singapore themed product, but it is meant for regional investors. So we have to understand they do not do it just for Singapore investors alone, right? So number 2, they are large enough to try that product. Number 3, and this is through experience, they want to be out there in case somebody needs an Asian exposure of Sharia nature. So just imagine if someone in the Middle East or even Indonesia, Malaysia, or any other countries, Muslimish countries, if the fund needs, see, you got to understand how investors do, right? They manage their risk through different exposures, right? So they don't want to be overexposed to a particular market or particular geographical location. Then they say, hey, I want to now have some funds in, say, Asian economy, and I want to be Islamic. So if some sovereign fund out there, or some family office out there would go and type the word Asia Sharia Fund, these companies will pop up, right? So it's for marketing purpose. Secondly, they're not doing just for Singapore alone. The other reason is that sometimes they don't have to do too much to generate these products. For example, if a fund manager in Malaysia has got the template, they just got to share the template with Singapore, and instead of Malaysian companies, they will now use the template on Singapore companies. For example, if you're talking about equity fund. And then if it's for sukuk, then it's quite an easy template to do it, right? So the short answer would then be, yeah, go on.
Template, is it about the structure? Is it about the framework? Because maybe the legislation, the law system will be different. When you say,
yeah, but
might want to actually explain further, what do you mean by template? Is it the framework, structure?
Okay, basic. Okay, there are two things. There's only 2 or 3 Islamic investment opportunities. So one of them is equity, which is done through stock screening, which everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
So the numbers are quite simple. So you just take the financials of a Singapore company, and then you put through the screen, and bang, now you've got a Singapore Sharia equity fund, right? So that's what I meant by a template for equity. On the sukuk side, the methodology, right? So if you say that, hey, I want to now issue a ijara fund, for example, which is a leasing fund, right? So you got to understand, Malaysia has a 2 route policy, right? They've got a conventional banking regulation, and then they've got an Islamic banking regulation.
Yes.
Right? And then in Singapore, there's only a single regulation where they say that, we don't care whether you are Sharia or non-Sharia, but you follow just one path. Right? So what they would do is that they would first then comply with everything that's required into the bond issuance according to Singapore law, and then they will now put the Sharia overlay onto it, because the Sharia overlay is already developed back home in Malaysia or Indonesia, etc. So and that's what I meant by the template.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Raj, for the clear explanation just now. Okay. Now follow up to the question. Follow up to the question before. With Islamic promoting values that transcend all faith, what can be done to position it as considerable option by non-Muslims too?
Okay. You see, when it comes to Islamic finance, my experience is we Muslims get very emotional with it, right? Because for a couple of reasons. One of them is sometimes we feel we are the keeper of the religion, right? So if we find somebody abused in Islamic finance, we get very emotional with it. Oh, the guy is doing something, trying to sell something non-Sharia, Sharia, for example. And then we ask 101 questions, right, about whether it's Sharia or not. I have been seeing a couple of debates. For example, in Singapore, when there is a return on your pension fund, known as CPF, right? There is a school of thought that say we can accept it because it's a gift from the government.
Okay.
Right? And then there's a different, but the language used by the Singapore government is interest, right? Which the purists vehemently would say, no, we will not accept interest, right? But the school of thoughts in Singapore, I've seen scholars and non-scholars and Muslims, pragmatic, have seen that it's acceptable, that gift from the government to be treated as gift. The amount given on your CPF saying as gift and not to be considered as interest, right? And there's a different school that's it. So the debate goes on, whether you want to or not. So unfortunately, I find that these get more exposure rather than how can we, basically sell Islamic finance to non-Muslims. I think what we should do, we should try, and this is something I do consciously. I do not try and use any Arabic terms when I explain Islamic finance to both Muslims and non-Muslims. Right? I find it's not necessary, and I think it kind of like sometimes distracts people from what we can offer. I have used this example many times, and I'll use it here for the benefit of people who are listening.
Right.
If somebody comes and asks you, what is Islamic finance? We tend to use a lot of the negative word, we don't, or it doesn't accept. This word has subliminal effects on us. Nobody likes the word don't, no, all of them has negative. So the body language is, what is Islamic finance? But we, who's supposed to sell it well, Instead, we put a door, we shut it. Oh, we can't do interest-based. We don't take alcoholic. We can't do derivatives. We can't do leverage. We can't. So instead of grabbing that sales, we seem to push it away. So somebody asked then, how do you explain it? And I said, we will do anything and everything under the sun, except things that are bad for myself as a human being, the community, and the environment. I said, we won't do anything that hurts us, the community, or the environment. So if you look at the whole tenets of Islamic finance, and if you put into this street philosophy, it falls beautifully, right? So somebody say, yeah, but your issue, your interest, you guys say you don't dabble in anything interest. I said, look, Islamic finance, and you will agree, and I'll put the ball back to them, are against usury, right? And the guy said, yeah, but how do you make money? I said, forget it. I said, just try missing your credit card bill by 1 week.
Yeah.
And you're going to be slapped with $100 bill and interest on as a financing charge. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hundreds of dollars. I said, are you happy with it? He said, no, I don't want to pay. So very simple. Nothing Islamic about it, but we are against it, right? So, and then they said, yeah, your alcohol and all those things, I can take according to limit. It's good for the heart, the wine, and etc. I said, look at the poster. If you drive, don't drink. Very simple. Nothing Islamic about it, right? So we have to start selling on. Yeah, the approach should be Islamic finance is pragmatic. Islamic finance is transparent. It is accountability. Everybody loves it. In a conference that I spoke to in Hong Kong once, and I think most of the people here will know this, the subscription of Islamic products in Malaysia by non-Muslims are higher than the Muslims.
Interesting.
Okay? So subscription rates of Islamic products, you can look it up to Google, by non-Muslims in Malaysia is higher than Muslims. So obviously someone in the crowd asked, why is that so? And then in the seminar, the person who's doing the presentation said, oh, because Islamic finance is transparent and accountable and transparent, what I call it. They give all the notice that we have to be accountable for our everything that we put, and we're very transparent in accounting. Then I raised the hand and I said, shouldn't every account should be? Why only Islamic finance must be transparent? I said, shouldn't every account should be transparent? And then you see, so we have to sell, obviously, and manifest, products on, on the pragmatism, on the logic of it, and etc. Right? Let me ask you a very simple question. The questions that I ask to anyone who asks for my money is, A, why should I give my hard-earned money to you? That's the first question I ask them. The second question I ask is, what are you doing to protect my money?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So first, why must I give you? Because behind you there are 200 others who wants my investment.
Okay.
And secondly, what are you doing to protect my money?
Mm-hmm.
The third thing is, what is the return? And the fourth thing is, are you Sharia compliant? Right? So I don't start with Sharia compliant one, because these are logical. If the person is Sharia compliant, you don't give your money to, because we read in the papers how many people have called it Sharia and have run away with money in scams. Right? So the first is, why should I give you the money? So you have to show your credentials, you got to show me your license, you got to show me your financial power, you got to show me your structure, you got to show your management. And then secondly, you must tell me all the risk management that you do to protect my money. So you should say that we don't go over excessive investments, we don't go into highly risk products, we don't gamble away and all those kind of things. And then the third thing is, we give you a 3%, 4%, whatever the amount is, until I'm happy with it. And then I ask you a Sharia. Right? So if you realize that in this questioning, we are being practical, we are being reasonable, and we are being logical in our thinking. So that's what we should do. Islamic products contains all of this.
So it's practical, logical, and one more, Mr. Raj?
And of course the return, right?
Yes, the return. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raj. So before we proceed to the next questions, once again, thank you to all our audience. And for those that has just joined us in our More Than Just Money series, where your financial curiosity will be answered. With us tonight, Mr. Raj Mohamad, the Managing Directors of 5 Pillars, with the topic today, Islamic Finance, Bloom or Doom. All right, Mr. Raj, in 2018, the number of Islamic finance degree providers amounted to 371. We know, all right, Mr. Raj, you yourself, you are an accredited training provider of the Islamic finance qualification by CICS SI from UK. How do you think someone new or already in the finance should start his Islamic finance journey? And with the number of educational institutes offering these courses, how should he or she, choose from what certification they would like to start and begin with when it comes to Islamic finance?
Okay, you must forgive me if I'm biased in my answers, but you can also defend and argue if I'm wrong, right? Look, first and foremost, when you decide to take up the subject of Islamic finance, you have to understand your job opportunities, because you're going to spend time and money, right? And I've always gone with a maxim called minimum effort, maximum return. In anything that you do, you have to spend as minimum effort as possible to yield the maximum return, right? Because this equation in any other format will not make sense. So if you put minimum effort, you cannot expect maximum, if you put minimum effort and then if you get minimum return, then that's not viable, because you want to put minimum and trying to get the most. If you put maximum effort and if you get minimum return, then you're wasted a lot of energy and resources. So the best equation is you got to put minimum effort and then try and get the best out of it, right? That's the best solution. So what is effort? Effort is your time, and effort is the amount of money you spent on it, right? So you're going to now spend a bit of money and then you want to get a qualification that's going to catapult you, or it's going to give you the best amount of opportunities out there, number one. Now, I'm not sure how many non-Muslims are in this, but Muslims have obviously an added advantage if they take Islamic finance, right? I mean, if somebody goes up, I am an accidental Islamic finance proponent, right? I was introduced to it because I was the only Muslim senior salesperson in the firm, and then they say, since you're a Muslim, can you take a look at it? And here I am where I am. So Muslims, so if you are a Muslim and if you take up an Islamic finance, chances of you getting that job, right, is far better than a non-Muslim with this, right? No disrespect to non-Muslims, but obviously because you not only do what you do, you live what you do, right? I mean, you cannot respect, and or you will not be able to see somebody who sells Islamic finance and then you see him at a bar getting drunk all the time. I mean, it doesn't
you
sink.
Preach what you do. You live your life the way you preach, something like that, right, Mr. Raj? Like,
exactly, right? So yeah. So that's exactly what you do. So what happens? So the next thing to look at, what do you have out in the market today, right? Now there are some institutions, and there are quite a few. There are people today on the net and Twitter and LinkedIn, whatever you call that, are giving you Islamic finance courses. Many of them free. You could go and do that if you want to get knowledge. That's fine. But if you want to do that and then try and get a certificate so that you can put it on your CV, then that's added advantage, right? So we recommend CISI for that, because CISI has got 4 different levels, and then when you complete all 4, you'll get a diploma. But even CISI have not completed the pedagogy yet. So they've got 2 levels available today, level 2, level 3, right? So what happens? Level 2, if you're going to take it up, you only need to spend, different jurisdictions charges differently, and we have charged as much as 2,000 for financials. So you spend X amount of money, you sit for a 30 multiple choice question, and just by getting 70%, you will get a certificate from the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investment in the UK. Now that certificate, right, calls it Islamic Bank, Fundamental Islamic Banking. You could put that on your CV, and then you will now wait and look at your opportunity. So what you're going to do? So you take that CV, you have only spent a month or two onto it, spend a bit of money, you've got a certificate that's recognized globally. And then you start your journey. Because sometimes after taking the course, you may not get the career you want that allows you to practice it, right? So what you do, you take that and then you try and navigate and get a job. And then let's say you land in a bank, maybe an Islamic bank for that matter. And then you are given a portfolio of managing Islamic finance product or selling Islamic financial product. Now, you cannot progress with CISI level 2 alone. Now you can start your journey of taking it into the Islamic University, and then you go to a postgrad in INSEAD, because now you've got an actual career that you're seeing the benefit. You have started something. Now, when you do that, then you would end up either managing a team or a bank or an investment firm on Islamic finance. And that's when you should really spend more time and money and etc. to get higher qualification. But if you were to spend all your money on that, and if you do not find to get a career that gives you you do not find a career that commensurate with what you have taken, then you tend to feel a bit disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Now, on that note, let me just add and rattle off what are the career opportunities, right? So if you take up Islamic finance, you would get in the all spectrum on the legal side, from advising how to write an Islamic finance contract. You know, you'll become a corporate finance professionals in cryptocurrency. I mean, the other day I was sharing this with it, and we shared some 30 different career opportunities in a sunrise industry, right? Not a sunset industry, right? So yeah, so I think there's a huge opportunity, especially now, because fintech allows you to now come up with products or some kind of application that will help you in Islamic finance too.
Like to marry the technology and Islamic finance is another level that we are heading.
It's absolutely. I think you all should, the young people in here should drop everything and look into it seriously.
Yes, definitely, Mr. Raj. Okay, Mr. Raj, the Islamic, thank you so much for the explanation about what's the career opportunity and what's the path in how to start off in educating ourselves with Islamic finance. And when we talk about Islamic finance development report stated that Malaysia has the highest amount of Sharia scholars. This is followed by Bangladesh, Indonesia, Sudan, and Iraq. Firstly, what exactly is the role of Sharia scholar? Secondly, how can we produce more scholars in developed countries such as Singapore? And sorry, Mr. Raj, just a bit of some adding, right? When we say about Islamic finance as a knowledge, it's not just one that has already mastered about investing in Islamic finance has the Islamic finance knowledge, right? So that is always the confusion. Like when one master one certain thing, one certain area about investing, for example, is it enough for you to say that we have mastered Islamic finance, Mr. Raj? Before heading to this.
Okay, so two questions. First, if somebody has got a concentrated knowledge on a certain segment of the market, have they mastered it, right? Yeah. So, yeah. And then secondly is, what does it take to become a Sharia scholar, right? So, if you look at this question, it's the same as in any discipline, right? So if you look at it, forget Islamic finance. So if somebody is a fund manager, right? If he has become so what are who are the players in the fund manager's segment? So you've got the research person. So the research person would be able to tell you which company to invest in, right? So that's research. And then the next person that you have is the trader. right? The person who actually buys and sells. And then you've got what you have is the compliance person who tell you what you should avoid, right? And then there's a risk management guy say that, yeah, it's fine that you could buy and sell, but how about your exposure? How do you diversify your exposure? So in the same spectrum, I don't think there is any title that says you're a master of Islamic finance in a particular segment, but one can choose to become a master in a particular segment, right? So what could it be? So one person can say that I am able to structure a sophisticated bond issuance or a sukuk issuance, put together a few things, and then able to do that well, right? While another person can say that I can concentrate on picking stocks that are Sharia compliant, etc. So that's what it is. So is yeah. So it gives you an immense amount of, including accounting, right? Like so accounting is another huge sector, but you must be able to know how do I read a conventional company that I want or other Muslims want to invest, and then pick out areas that are acceptable and things that are not acceptable. For example, Muslims want to invest in Google and Facebook and Microsoft and etc. None of these companies would lift a finger to want to go and call themselves Sharia, correct? But there are fund managers who will decide with the scholar to say whether they are Sharia compliant or not, right? So when they do that kind of deliberation, then what they will do is they will be able to read their financials, which is written a conventional way. So only a Sharia scholar who is good in the accounting bit in Islamic finance able to decipher the conventional financial accounting to say whether they're compliant or not, right? So have I answered that correctly?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Raj.
Good.
All right. So for the second question.
Good. So the second question is Sharia scholar.
Yeah.
Now,
so how can we
you see,
scholars in this developed country such as Singapore?
Yeah, but the question here is, whether someone wants to make a career out of it, right? So that's where it all starts. So somebody who has done well in Islamic finance, now he could have one of the most sterling credentials, but he may not get himself as a recognized Sharia scholar, right? So to look at this, you got to look at the same way you look at someone in the legal fraternity, right? So somebody comes up with it, has done first-class honors in his law firm. Now he cannot become a senior counsel overnight, right? So what he has to do, he has to chalk up good cases. So in the same way, this anyone who aspires to be, they have got to go and partner with a renowned name and learn. And then, so who are the who's who in Sharia scholars today? So if you look at it, there are a few names to come to your mind, right? Obviously, Dr. Ali Al-Ghari, Dr. Daud Baka, Taqi Usmani, Nizam Yaqubi. Now, you got to understand all these names that I mentioned, they started their journey 3 decades ago. That's why they are where they are today. So, if you want to be a scholar, similarly like a senior counsel or a Queen's Counsel, you got to start today, partner with the right, the right Islamic financial firm or company, and you got to start getting your signatures on the certification, right? You got to start doing that, and then whether it is a good product or a bad product, you got to be careful. So that's how your journey to. So I don't think it may be wise to try and become a Sharia scholar for Singapore market, but you can try and become a Sharia scholar because it's global, right? Because your customers are global. So you don't sign just Singapore products, right? You'll be signing off for products in even Saudi or any parts of the world, right? So the opportunity is good, but don't stick to Singapore as a market.
Make ourselves international so we can.
Yes. So
we All right, Mr. Raj, next. 5 pillars. Your company has been the Sharia advisor for Sabana REIT, Sabana REIT, since 2010. According to Halal Universe, and with the recent news of the management choosing not to continue with the Sharia compliant status, do you see it impacting future Islamic finance deals in a negative way, since the management did say less than 2% of the investor base were Muslims? Do share with us the 10 years relationship with Shabana which you had, Mr.
Okay, well, obviously I'm bound by certain confidential, clauses that doesn't allow me to share everything, but I have cleared with them prior to talk what I could, and I could share it with you. You see, first and foremost, we must be very thankful for a group of non-Muslim REITs managers who 10 years ago decide to label their REITs as Sharia compliant. We must be thankful to them, right? So, it's not a bunch of Muslims who wanted to do this, a bunch of non-Muslims, because they felt that there was a market for it. Number one. Number two, as a manager of a REIT, right? And what is a REIT? I have to give a quick primer on that.
All right.
The job of real estate investment trust means, as the name implies, real estate investment and trust. So the managers will buy, or they call it the owners, right, of Sabana.
Yes, Sabana.
They would go out there. They would go out there and they would collect money from the public. So if they have collected $1 billion, they'll use the $1 billion and they'll start buying, in this case, industrial properties.
All right.
So they've got and buying the properties, and then what they do, so they've collected money from the public and investors. They have bought $1 billion worth of real estate properties, and then their job is to pass it to a manager, the REITs manager, who will manage those properties by trying to get the highest amount of rental income.
Yeah.
So when they get the highest amount of rental income, they would then distribute the rental income to the investors periodically.
As a profit, yeah. Okay.
Well, they don't call it profit, it is their return. So what have I done? So if you look at the flow of money, you will know. I collected money from the public. I've gone and used that money to buy properties. Because they gave me the money, why? Because they think I'm good enough to manage properties that will give me good rental income.
All right, income.
So they gave me the money because they want something for their money. So if their money they put in the bank, it pays them less than 1% in the bank. They say, let's give it to this company who will give me 4 or 5% per annum, for example. So that 4 or 5% is the rental, right? And that is distributed to the investors, in this case, quarterly.
Okay.
So every quarter, everyone who gave me the money to buy the properties will get a certain amount of money in their bank account.
Okay.
Okay? So the job of the manager, when they started, they said, let's try and go Sharia, because they found a group of Islamic investors who were very happy to invest in it. Now, remember the question I say first. When somebody gives you money, they will ask you, why should I give you the money? What are you going to do to protect my money? And what are you going to give me in return? And then the last thing is Sharia. So they gave it to them on day one, 10 years ago, because they believe that they have the skill sets of knowing which assets to buy and how to manage. And then when they asked, how are you going to protect the money? They sold them, they gave them the reason. Oh, I'll get 3 months deposit, they pay me upfront, I'll get quality investors, this is the Singapore profile, this is lacking, whatever, right? And they convince the investors, right? And then the third thing is they said, hey, if you allow me to do this, I can give you, on an average, 4 to 5%. So the investors were happy. And then they say, do me a favor, if you give me the money, I'll make sure the business is halal. They say, wow, that's even great. So that's what they did 10 years ago. And then over the years, you must understand, halal was sort of a day one, right? That was not their primary interest,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when the market weak over the years for various reasons, when they were paying 6-7%, that began to fall. So the return was dropping, and then this was listed in the stock market. The stock prices was also dropping for various reasons, right? It's the whole REITs market in Singapore, the whole property market, whole rental market. You know, many people can do a lot of things in now smaller space with lesser people. So the very other moving parts that resulted in them not giving the return they promised the investors earlier. So because of that, you found the Muslim investors has now gone from whatever the percent to 2%. So we cannot blame them. Now, will this impact Singapore Sharia market? I think so, but I don't think it's doomsday. But I think, there are still many rooms for us to come up with more products, and I still think
Sorry.
there are enough other REITs to, go for it.
Okay, for IG Live, we are restricted to 1 hour in order for us to save this live. Yeah.
Oh, no, okay.
Oh, we have
So,
8:56. So, yep. Okay. The last few words, Mr. Raj.
I don't know who's listening, but I still think Islamic finance has an enormous opportunity. Fintech gives you a lot of it. Don't hold back. Go out there and sell Islamic finance. Go start demanding it, because only when you demand, people will stand up and look that there's a market for it. And then obviously you all are well educated. So try, and when you can invest, continue to ask for Islamic finance. And I'm sure Singapore is the right place to have the right ingredients to promote Islamic finance well.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Raj.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I believe that's a lot more that you would like to share with us, but time is not our side. Do look out on IF@SG space for the next episode for More Than Just Money series, a series for anything that is Islamic finance related. So once again, thank you, Mr. Raj. Once again, thank you everyone, to all the participants, and see you again. Good night and stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.